and gentlemen, outreach for know-it-alls. So I'm here to tell you that you know it all, and I really do believe that. And I say that because I'm pretty sure you've done everything necessary to have a successful outreach event. Sometime in your life, you just didn't call it an outreach event, because that's a word that's kind of reserved for neighborhood councils. But I know you've had a garage sale, or a birthday party, or gotten married, or done any of a number of things where you went through some very basic steps, and that's what we're going to do tonight. So the first thing that you need to do, my outreach know-it-alls, is you've got to know yourself. And by that I mean, if you were to knock on the door of someone who just moved into your neighborhood and say, "Hi, my name's Stephen, I'm with the Northridge East Neighborhood Council, and you want to mow the lawn, sell me a newspaper, what? What?" So one thing I notice is that we tend to know ourselves and each other in a little bubble, but we don't really capture who we are and then communicate that well to other folks. Lydia's here. Lydia's from a commission, and at the beginning of the commission meeting, they read rules. Am I right? Ladies and gentlemen, there's a process we're going to follow here. But what they don't do, and neighborhood councils don't do, is what we do in real life, which is to introduce ourselves. And so if someone came to your meeting for the first time, would they know where they are? And I did go to the wrong place the first time I went to your neighborhood council many years ago. And when I stood up and spoke, they said, "You're at the wrong place."
You didn't know?
I didn't know.
Because they didn't tell you.
But I did have this little 311 card, resource card that gets mailed to everybody. I don't know, I bounced around like a pinball, and we see people at City Hall all the time. They're either tourists or lost. Right? The tourists look happy about the journey. Right? And then there's the people, and they're holding like a ticket, a summons, a plan, and they're not happy because they don't know where they're going. We get emails all the time. We had one person that wanted to run for the city council and didn't know what to do from the city council and neighborhood council. Right? You still signed him up. He's on a neighborhood council now. But the thing is that if someone were to move into your neighborhood, are you able to clearly articulate who you are? So deep down inside you might know who you are, but are you able to communicate this in such a way that in a greeting you're able to communicate that? And so the test here is, are you able to open the meeting up by saying, "Hey, welcome to the Sylmar Neighborhood Council," and then clearly state in one sentence what that means, what you stand for. It doesn't have to be your mission statement, but it can certainly be a little bit more to help us know, am I in the right place? Is this the group of people I want to hang out with? So if I were to knock on the door and say, "Hey, welcome to the neighborhood. I saw the moving truck. I saw you just moved in. So my name's Stephen Box. I live across the street. So I'm a father. I'm a cyclist, and my wife is into gardening." Right? All of a sudden you say, "Oh, there's either a point of interest or not." So if you were to introduce your neighborhood council the same way, are you able to tell them that we focus on land use issues, preserving? I see that you just bought this house. You must be really happy. I want you to know that our neighborhood council is engaged in land use issues, preserving the character and personality of this neighborhood, and doing everything we can to slow down the traffic so it's safe on the streets in our neighborhood. That person's either interested or not. "Hey, how you doing? My name's Tom. I'm with the Hollywood United Neighborhood Council. I'm on the land use committee. We're working really hard to slow down the development." "Really? I'm the greedy developer. I just moved in." So you'll find out quickly if there's a point of interest. But the 50,000 people average in your neighborhood council should be able to quickly figure out what that means, neighborhood council. And they're all different, all 95. North by San Pedro, it was a land use issue that activated folks, right? It was also a skateboard park. It's been many things, but are you clearly able to articulate what it is that is interesting about your neighborhood council in a greeting? Even your business card has a description. So in that, "Hi, I'm with the Hollywood United Neighborhood Council," what's the rest of the sentence? So that's the essence of know yourself. So very quickly, if you'll focus, if you'll get disciplined and repeat that over and over, and the test, the accountability element is, can the other people on the board repeat the same thing? Because keep in mind, you're only as good as the weakest link, right? So that's know yourself. And we're going to work on this in the breakout session. So the second element of being a know-it-all, an outreach know-it-all, is know your audience. Right? So in your neighborhood, is there a school? Are there folks that hang out in the park? Is there a park? Is there a need for a park and there's a whole lot of people that want a park? Is there a dash? Are there people that want a dash? Is it a transportation issue? In other words, your audience aren't just demographics, 16-year-olds, 20-year-olds, 30, 40. They're also interest groups. Like, are there folks that are interested in a swimming pool, a skateboard park, a youth job fair? So some of the great things that neighborhood councils have done are because they found out that there was a call for it. And you'll know that if you talk to your audience. And you'll hear it from your audience if you go looking for them. So one of the first things you need to do is focus. Can you make a list of all of the organizations, the demographic groups, and break your neighborhood down into the different elements, and then decide who's your audience. And so if it's a residential community and you have a land use issue, is it the homeowners associations that are your audience? And then how would you communicate and connect with them? So in that sense, sometimes we frame what we do from our perspective without really talking to our audience and finding out what's important to them. And some of the most successful neighborhood councils have had opportunity thrown at them. Emergency preparedness, sometimes something will happen and then there's a heightened sensitivity for emergency preparedness, and then you have an audience that wants to connect with you because you can connect them with the community, and together you'll be a much better prepared next time round for something that happens. So that's the second element of being an outreach know-it-all, is to know your audience. And the third element is to know your partners. And I know you know them because they're on your agenda. And they come and ask you for support. They come and ask you for money. They come and ask all the time. And these are your potential partners. And if you were to slow down and focus and make a list of all of the people that are active in your community, friends of the library, right? Friends of the park, CERT, Community Police Advisory Board, Rotary Club, Kiwanis Club. Just drive by the bowling alley and look at all of the plaques of the people that meet there. Those are your partners. They each have a mailing list. They may even come by and ask you for stuff, like the YMCA will come and ask you to send some kids to camp. But look at all of those organizations that are doing work. Is there a farmer's market in your neighborhood? So they're already having events. There's two kinds of events, by the way. There's the ones you organize that take a lot of work, and the ones that other people organize where you can set up a table. So think of all of the partners that are already doing the work. Can you get in there and table and help them and sponsor, but capitalize on the fact that they're doing the work? The second thing is they've got a mailing list. Or if it's a school, you can put your flyers in the kids' backpacks. Not anymore. Okay. Somewhere. Chatsworth getting tough on that, eh? But you can activate. What's that? There are ways to activate the schools so that you can capitalize on those networks, and you do that by knowing your partners, because you don't have to be an expert at everything, but you should know one. So in this room, we have an education expert. You should all introduce yourself to her. You looking around, Lizzie? And then use that relationship with Lydia to say, how can I get into the schools in my neighborhood? And we meet in them. I mean, a quarter of our neighborhood council elections were at a school. A quarter of them were at a community center and a rec and parks building. The 20% was perhaps at libraries. In other words, we even hold our events at these places and still haven't asked those people to be our partners. And I know this because when we asked for the phone numbers of the people in charge, we often got, I don't know, nothing. Because we don't have that relationship. So in the spirit of knowing partners, there's no reason to do it alone. I mean, you do enough work as it is, but to do it alone just makes it harder. So the third element is to know your partners. And I strongly suggest that if you take some time and focus and make a list, you can make a pretty good list. You don't have to know everybody that does everything everywhere, but you should know a really strong core group of people that you can count on as your partners so that you can work together to do whatever your mission is. And so if you were to take some time and focus on that, if you were to hold yourselves accountable, like are they regularly getting invited to your events? I think that that would have a dramatic impact on your outreach. And so the fourth element is to know your objectives. Now, earlier I mentioned some events that I know you've all participated in that demonstrate you know the basic elements of a great outreach strategy. I said garage sale, right? So if you throw a garage sale, you need to know your audience. Are you selling collectibles, tools, furniture, junk? But seriously, there's a different way to communicate all those four things. Is it an estate sale? Is it a cleaning out the garage sale? Different audiences. And so on this particular element here, oftentimes we forget to really focus on what's the objective here. So if education is your purpose, is your objective to connect with the families of all of the students, is your objective to make the community safer for the kids so they can walk and ride their bikes to school, is your objective to hold town hall meetings so that we're participating in the selection of the folks that are running our school district, is your objective to get the parents to sign a survey so that we can start to affect policy. So sometimes we are active, sometimes we make lots of buzzing, but there's two kinds of buzzing. Mosquitoes buzz and it's really annoying. Bees buzz and it makes something really enjoyable. So sometimes activity, outreach activity is a whole load of buzzing, but it's really not going anywhere. And in fact, it starts to annoy a lot of people. You keep sending me flyers, I don't know what you do. You keep sending me flyers, I don't know why I care. You know, during the election, did y'all get a whole lot of mail? And at a certain point, I started to get kind of less likely to vote for those folks. I mean, especially some of the paid slates. Like, I just became sort of, I'm not buying it. So are we kind of being noisy without any impact, or are we being noisy and enticing folks because we're clear on communicating what our objective is? Because if the objective is to, Northwest San Pedro, they had a kids' job fair. It wasn't just a job fair, which is a wonderful thing in and of itself, but it was for kids because they're getting out of school, they didn't have the skills or the opportunity, so they brought the employers together, they brought folks together to teach them how to write a resume, how to fill out an application, and how to interview. They had a kids' job fair. When you open with an objective, we want to put our kids to work, we want you to help us, all of a sudden, what you're asking for is going to turn into something meaningful. Because we all get 24 hours a day. Nobody gets more, nobody gets less. So the volunteers that are putting their time out there for you and with you would like their time to be meaningful. They're contributing. And so if you clearly articulate and focus, what's your objective this year? Is it to hold the town halls? Is it to get some survey data? Is it to open that park? Is it to forge a better relationship with a department? Is it to get City Hall to come to your neighborhood more often? Is it to get street services to come with that truck of asphalt and fix all those potholes? Is it to get feedback from the neighbors on what street they want fixed? That would be clearly articulating your objective, and I contend that this is a really important one for your outreach plans. And our next one is to keep score. And you should know the score all the time. In fact, it should be ingrained in you to keep score. And I actually walked through the room and counted heads. I mean, it's just, I know how many we invited, I know how many RSVP'd, I know how many showed up, I know how many meetings we hold. And then we'll come back and we'll check in with you to see if there's any impact. but you should keep score. Now, does anyone have a dog? Dogs will, 2 dogs. You throw the stick, what happens?
One chases it.
And does it bring them back, or do they fight?
Sometimes.
They don't keep score. They'll just do that all day long.
Yeah.
But we're not dogs. No, we're not. I'll let you know, I count a lot of things. Like, when I'm riding my bicycle. Hey, how far did you ride your bike?
0.4 miles.
0.4, not 0.3, not 0.5, but 0.4 miles. Like so many things we do, we keep track. And when it matters, I know you keep track. So NC can tell me exactly how many miles. She sets the odometer all the time, every time she fills up, because she knows exactly how many miles she can go before we're in a crisis. And then she gets as close as she can every time. So, but
That's a Hungarian word.
it's a Hungarian trick. So the thing is that we know the mileage of our cars, we know what's in our bank account. When things matter, we keep score. And so we keep score. And you should know the score. I know that treasurer's a lot of pressure on you to know the score. How much money do we have? How much do we have committed? How much do we have, that's left in our accounts? But it's there's so much more to what we do. And it's really important if you're going to, the EmpowerLA Award is a great way to, for us to celebrate at the Congress. But keep in mind every year, every department goes before the City Council and tells them what they do. The library knows exactly how many hours of volunteer work has been done. And they let the City Council know. In fact, I think he took in a check for, was it $4 million? He took the chief librarian, head librarian took in a check for $4 million, big check. Because that's the value of the work of the Friends of the Libraries. He put a number on it, okay? And I think y'all do great work. I know you do great work. And you do great work when there's a crisis in the neighborhood, like in Chatsworth. You do great work when there's conflict in the neighborhood. You do great work in all these different circumstances, but if we don't tell our story, the person that just moved into your neighborhood won't know anything about you. And when you knock on the door, and say, I'm from the NoHo Northeast Neighborhood Council, and because they won't have heard the legendary accomplishments of your neighborhood. So it's really important that we keep score so we can tell a great story. And I promise you this, the newspapers want great stories. It's up to us to tell a great story, and it starts with keeping score. So for example, on the elections, 659 people volunteered. That's a great story. 659 people volunteered out of our neighborhoods to work on the elections. And so while the Election Reform Commission is meeting to figure out ways to get out the voters, I think it's kind of cool that Lydia can say, well, neighborhood councils were up citywide 29%. Okay? So she's able to give them the score. But it's really important that you focus on what is it that's meaningful in your neighborhood and what are you going to count? Are you going to count the community impact statements? Because there's one neighborhood council that really does a great job with community impact statements. They're great at it. So we should keep track of that because that shapes policy. Is your mailing list something that we should keep track of? Because you're signing people up and you're communicating. Are you getting a response from them? Well, we send out 10,000 mailers and we got back 2. Okay, well that's a number. Next time, let's go for 3. Are you getting surveys back? Are you asking opinions? Are you turning your behavior into something that you can count? And so what's our next thing? Ladies and gentlemen, know your tools. So I'm not really a good cook. Which means that if I were in charge of hospitality, we'd have burnt brownies and I would wander off. But when I went to Chatsworth, they have the hospitality champion. And there was some snacks and a hug. I thought, wow, it's a long way. But it was so worth it to go to the Chatsworth Neighborhood Council because they had a champion hospitality star there that really made it a warm, welcome experience. So the moral of the story there is, that's a tool that's good for you. But you know what? It's perhaps not what I'm good at. So you don't have to be an expert at every single tool in the outreach toolbox. But you should know what you're good at, and then look around your board to find out who else is good at something. So for example, if you're not a neighborhood council, a woman from a neighborhood council came and said, "We got a tweeter." I said, "Cool, so what's your tweeter do?" "Tweets." So they didn't know what that meant, but they were pretty tickled that they found someone that understood what Twitter was, and they were going to put that person to work. And it wasn't integrated, but it was a start. The point here is that you don't have to be all things to all people, but do what you know, and if there's a tool that you want to embrace, then figure out how it works. But put to work the things that you know, and make sure they're consistent with your objective, with your story, and all the other elements, okay? In 2 weeks, we'll be focusing on some very specific technical tools. A little bit later, we'll be touching on some non-technical tools. But in either case, whatever you select, focus and say to yourself, is this something that we can sustain? Is this something we can do the entire time? And then reach out to the rest of the board, because if they're not buying in on it, then you're kind of going to be the person that's out there working a mailing list with no mail. Okay, so if you don't have an editor to put your newsletter together, then don't make email blasts and newsletters your strategy. There's a couple of neighborhood councils that actually have professionals that work in that are either publishers, editors, or writers, and they put those people to work and they do beautiful newsletters. Some of them help other neighborhood councils, which is why when we were talking about look around you to see who's here, if there's someone that does something really well in your region, now's the opportunity to start working together with them, just like we did during elections. But if you happen to have someone that is great with newsletters, put them to work and make that your strategy. And so the point here is just to embrace the things that you or someone on the board can do well, or pick those things and let's figure out a way to get to the point that you can do them well. Or is there someone around you that can help you do them? And it doesn't have to be everything, but you should pick a few tools and really put them to work. So focus on what tools that you have available to you that you feel you're competent at. Work with your board to make sure that they buy in on it. And then figure out some way to measure the effectiveness of that tool. Okay? So these are the 6 steps. You've got a worksheet in front of you. These are the 6 steps of an outreach know-it-all plan. And I say this because seriously, if you remove yourself from the neighborhood council arena and just think, if you were planning a wedding, on a wedding invitation, it still tells us who Biff and Betty are. A young couple in love. Is that not obvious? It's a wedding invitation. But they still take the time to tell you who they are. A young couple in love. And so regardless of whether it's a wedding invitation, and then who would you invite? And how much time goes into figuring out who your audience is for the wedding? I think a lot of the first fights start there, right? First tier, second tier, they're allowed to give gifts, but they're not allowed to come to the reception. Your side's looking bigger than mine. But that's the audience, right? Partners. So Sydney's 2.5, so we're throwing the 2.5 birthday party, which means our audience is anyone with a 2.5-year-old. And our partners are anyone that's a lifeguard, cook, babysitter, anything I need. Those are my partners in throwing that event. So if you think about all of the events that you've thrown in your personal life, it's the same basic steps. What's my objective? I want Sydney to be happy. Right? Do I want gifts or no gifts? We don't want any because, what's that? Oh, I'm telling you, with a cardboard box, he's happy for a week. So I mean, so we're going to say, please don't. Just come join us and be joyful. But the thing is, be clear and tell people, because people want to contribute in a meaningful way if you'll just communicate clearly. Focus and communicate clearly who you are, what your objective is, how you're going to measure success. But if you can focus on these, I think you'll have a tremendous outreach experienced this year in your neighborhood council. All right? So that's outreach for know-it-alls. And you, ladies and gentlemen, are know-it-alls. And how do we know that? Because we got graduation certificates for you. And if anyone ever challenges you, I want you to say, actually, I'm a know-it-all. And here's the evidence. I'm a know-it-all, an outreach know-it-all. So thanks very much, folks.